Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today on this episode of the Bibliosophia channel. My name is Samuel David, and I am your host. And today I have the pleasure of interviewing artist, academic, and author José Gabriel Alegría Sabogal. Now is the time. José, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
So there's a lot of ground that we could cover. You are quite the celebrity in the occult as far as your art's concerned, your writing is concerned. You've certainly had your hands on a number of projects, but I want to talk about the upcoming project, the Kickstarter project that's kicking off within a few weeks. We have Yao, which is going to be reprinted, and then we have another title that consists of your work that hasn't been circulated or hasn't been recently circulated in a while. Is that correct?
After Yao came out last year, I think it was around July or August last year, there started to be quite a lot of interest, renewed interest in my stuff because I had published stuff earlier, but it was, I think, a rather small edition, so to speak, and it was more than 5 years ago. And so all the people that were actually, well, were very much fascinated, and I'm very glad of how Yao was received. They started asking, and where's the rest? We know that Jose produced something earlier, but we didn't know his stuff before. And so there started being this renewed interest. And that's when Gabriel slowly started contacting me very directly. Like, I think we really have to reprint all the stuff because it's been out of circulation for a while. And I would say it's very different. It's two books basically that will constitute this new Semesilam edition, and which are the Handbook of Sacred Anatomy and the Sacred Nature that I published with Jan Sophia Press. I think for the aims of the Kickstarter, it's pretty important to mention that it's not new material. It's in fact older material. So it's a compilation of my artwork as it was produced around mostly and before 2017, essentially. So it's more of an art book than Yao, if we can say so, because Yao is a hybrid of art history, artwork, and something else.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know what Yao is, but I think that's interesting, and that's the fun of it. And Semesilam is going to be pretty much a reprint of the art books that I had produced previously. More like what an artist would produce normally instead of Yao. And I'm very glad it's coming by. Semesilam, the title itself, goes hand in hand with Yao, I think. It's an inscription that you can find in some Abraxas stones. In fact, it's more often found than the Abrasax inscription itself, and it was translated as the Eternal Sun. So that's why it's called Semesilam, the Eternal Sun, by Charles W. King. And you can find it actually in different levels of corruption because it actually comes from this shamash in Hebrew. So it's basically a very corrupted form of Hebrew in the way you find it in the gemstones, which is actually written in Greek. So it's like many layers of that constitute that word. But I really like it because it goes hand in hand with the voces magicae, so this barbaric words that were found in magic, in Greco-Egyptian magic, that they have sometimes many layers of corruption, and sometimes they are not even corruptions of anything. They are just magical voices.
Right.
I thought it was a nice idea to put it that to take that title to go hand in hand with Yao, because Yao is also like a non-linguistic title. It basically it doesn't pretend to be a descriptive title. It's just what it is. So yeah, I don't know if I'm talking a lot from the get-go, but that pretty
Well,
much answers so
you're
far.
certainly whetting my appetite as well as the appetite of viewers, listeners, and those who are going to eventually be throwing money at this Kickstarter, and will soon have that book in their little hands. One thing I do want to ask, I'm sure that you have indulged other hosts with these sorts of questions time and time again, but I personally have to ask this question. What was the inspiration for the work that will soon be reprinted? Aside from the esoteric aspect, what was the driving force that compelled you to pick up your pen, pick up your pencil, put it all to paper, and breathe life into it?
Well, partly, I mean, you could say there's a bibliographic level, because pretty much the work I'm always influenced by is Renaissance prints, Renaissance engravings. So essentially, I was super interested in early printed books, and I was and I always try to be very open when I take sources and I do my own sort of, so to speak, my own reinterpretation, my own remixes of this mythical and theological themes in the language of early printed sources. So that is pretty much my beginning, so to speak. What actually started, I think, the first corpus of my work was that it was also very much influenced by Agrippa, by the Hypnarotomachia Polyphili, Polyphilo's Dream. It's a very beautiful book that was very influential to me visually, because it's full of these enigmas, these visual enigmas, the mix hieroglyphs, letters, and visuals as well, and ruins, and they reimaginate this antiquity in a very interesting Renaissance way, which I think it's not exactly Renaissance. It's more or less this timeless idea of what you could consider this perennial idea of wisdom, and which was very much tied with magic as well for Giordano Bruno. But on another level, there is also the work that I was doing with human skulls and human remains that is going to be reprinted as well. And I think that was also a driving force that people wanted to know more about, because I was working very intensely in those years with human skulls that a good friend started bringing to my house for some reason. And so I started working from them and on them as well. So they also became the paper from some of my drawings and paintings, so to speak, that are done on them. So we're going to be including more register than before on that. And that's more like the irrational side, you could say, the less bookish side, of course. But it goes hand in hand with everything I wanted to do, pretty much. But that's, of course, the part that I can explain less rationally, but I think it's there, and I've tried to include, we've included new introduction by me, trying to reflect what was going on then, and also with Frater Acher and Gabriel himself from Anathema, so that we can enrich this book a bit more, because actually the first publications, they were very raw. They were actually on just unexplained images a lot of the times. Very mysterious, you could say, but I felt that sometimes it felt short on actually complementing what was going on with some more insight into it.
So with regards to the Kickstarter, with regards to, revitalizing this text and providing more context and more information to supplement the images, is there any intention of including any new images, new iconography?
Yeah, actually, the Semesilam compilation, we can call it that way, actually includes many works that I didn't include before, but they are old works, so they are from 2017 or before, so they actually belong to the same time frame. But I was much more messy as an artist, and any practicing artist will know that producing artwork is one thing, but actually organizing your artwork in an archival way is something that you learn with time, and it's not easy to do, sort of following after what you're doing and put it in context slowly and put it in order. It's really quite another job, and I learned how to do that actually well into working with Anathema. So it took me a while, and I'm trying to correct some of my mistakes in that way, and including a lot of artwork that I simply didn't have the time to scan back then, that was missing from this work. Regarding the Kickstarter, I think it's important to mention basically why are we doing it, because it's pretty ambitious for Anathema, as it is basically, it started as a one-man effort. To print both titles at the same time, because Anathema usually goes one by one. That's important to mention, one book at a time. And in this case, sort of the ambition is that we can actually print my whole material at once, essentially. So everything I've produced to be printed in one get-go, so people can get both Yao and Semesilam, which is basically my retrospective work, all at the same time. In the same line, we will be producing reprinting as well, prints. So reprint and prints. That's important to say. Of artwork that can be reproduced bigger, because some pieces are actually way bigger than the way they can physically appear in Yao and inside Semesilam. And also we want to include maybe some original artwork that we're going to be offering also. That's sort of a test, and let's see how it moves with Anathema, but I think a lot of people have been interested. And I also rely on Anathema a lot because I'm not that good managing my own online persona, so to speak. So I really want to move on with Anathema and see how it works with producing more prints and more artwork, because always my full time is either in academia or even in producing new stuff. So that's why I'm always sort of overly busy with this stuff, and I really want to. I'm really happy that so much effort is being put into making this available again, because I really couldn't manage it myself. That's important to mention. So yeah.
So with regards to the art that's going to be included in the book, not only will we have the retrospective, we will also have the early drawings, if you will. Will that give us a glimpse into the life of the artist as a young man, or is the work rather consistent as the years go by? Has there been any change to your art style, your brand, if you will?
I would say a lot. That's visible, of course, to me as an artist. Technique-wise, theme-wise, I have felt the difference, of course, as I grow older and you polish your own technique and so on. But also at the same time, I'm a slow learner, and I also encourage this idea that things don't have to be quick or to evolve quick, and you don't really have to step out of your comfort zone all the time, because otherwise you're not learning. Actually, learning goes slow. So I'm pretty happy with most of the work that is included there. I wouldn't actually change it. What happens is that you gain more insight sometimes, and also some work is basically based on visualizations. So I'm very happy with how it looks, in fact. But sometimes I feel I cannot explain some of those images, because I just look at them again and I'm like, what was I in? That's something I've tried to mitigate with Yao, certainly. Able to explain some stuff, but that really happens in some older stuff that I myself sometimes get amazed in a positive way, but at the same time wondering, like, wow, what was I up to? And yeah, we're including also some pictures of what used to be my workshop back then, my studio, which was pretty chaotic. It was basically just me drawing on a lot of bones and just being free there, because I was basically renting an dilapidated house, and I was very free to do what I wanted there, because it didn't cost almost anything, and I was sort of almost squatting, you could say. That was the way I liked it, in a very, I don't know, anarchic way, but that's where I produce most of my stuff, in fact, and that's what produced the basis of what I've done later. So yeah, I hope it sheds some light in what I was doing back then, which was, of course, way more wild, you could say, than what can be Yao as well. You know, I've grown to be more of an academic, if one could say, but I'm trying to solve that issue as well and get to be more of an artist. After
It's
all,
difficult to bridge the gap between the two at times. Do you feel as though your foray into academia has had perhaps a negative impact on your work as an artist? Do you have to balance that tightrope between the two?
yeah, actually, this past couple of years were super tough in the sense that I felt I wasn't able to draw almost anything sometimes. Of course, I think I kept actually doing it when I look at what has happened in these last 2 years, but my production certainly receded a lot, and that's why a lot of people were like demanding for me to produce more stuff. And I came to this very strange realization, like, well, I have to be an artist after all, because what you encounter is usually the opposite, is people telling you, no, you're not going to be an artist, you're not going to make it. And well into academia, I realized, no, I really have to be an artist at this point, because, you know, that there is a demand, there is a constant interest, and it's almost a responsibility that I have to fulfill, because I felt really academia has been considerably stopping me from going all the way in as I should have. But I hope it will all nurture something new and something more powerful, I expect.
How is your artwork received by your fellow academics in your field?
That's
Are
a
they
funny question.
aware of your artistic proclivities and vision?
Sometimes not. I like to keep this double life, that I never force my yeah. I never force my artwork into people. Like, if they don't want to see it, I'm never going to introduce myself to somebody new and tell them like I'm an artist. That's a funny thing, but yeah, I prefer not to, because academia can be very counterproductive in the sense that people don't feel they have the right to say something, because you always feel too judged. And so producing something new, having the voice to create artistically is almost anathema, let's use the words,
Mm-hmm.
for academics sometimes, because you can only do derivative work from a primary source. So being mad enough to say, well, I'm going to take these sources and I'm going to do these drawings, it's sometimes too wild, and I prefer not to bring it into the conversation unless I'm asked about it. And it's fun because although in the other half, you can be an artist, and then people realize, oh, but you're also an academic, and how does that work? And yeah, that's interesting, because I usually don't put it out very openly when it comes to academia. I prefer to have an academic life, sometimes separate from that. But yeah, I don't know.
A man of two faces. So one thing that I happen to notice, at least, you know, in my own approach to the occult, the esoteric, you know, whenever I'm consuming media or reading, whether that would media being, you know, film or television, I always keep an eye out on the images that are used. And when I was reading Yao, I was familiar with your work, but then when I finally acquired Yao after fighting tooth and nail to get a copy aftermarket, I noticed as I was watching The Ninth Gate and going through the book at the same time while The Ninth Gate played in the background, I just looked at some of the artwork, and then I happened to look up to the TV screen at the same time where Balkan is delineating on some of the artwork, and I'm just looking at that going, okay, maybe I'm just reading into it, but the woodcuts, the similarities, it was too obvious for me. Did that film have an impact on you as well? Did that pique your artistic curiosity?
Actually, the book in the Ninth Gate, Club Dumas, and
Mhm.
well, the book, the Ninth Gate, so the fictional book,
Yes.
is modeled after this Polyphilos dream. So the Pnerotomachia Polyphily that I mentioned, that was the visual model for the Ninth Gate book, essentially, that they designed. So actually, that was what took me to that book, to that Renaissance book, and that's where I started drawing a lot from that. So yeah, of course, it was part of my early fantasy, so to speak. And I actually wanted to get the real thing, which in this case was the Renaissance version, where they actually derived the Ninth Gate from.
Mhm.
And still, when I'm doing research, it's a joke that I have with my close friends. You know, this stuff could be from the Ninth Gate. You know, it's when you see also what happened with the Heinrich Kunrad books, that each book has a different array of engravings.
Yes.
In every edition, the engravings have a different order, and they might have variations. Not even every edition, every exemplar of it. So yeah, I think it's part of the idea. But again, you know, it's this question with magical realism. You know, when is something fictional and when is actually life imitating art. So the other way around. But yeah, of course.
Well, in the case of your work, I'm fairly certain that in 300 years, 400 years, 500 years, when archaeologists acquire a copy of your book, they're going to be scratching their heads wondering.
And that is actually, I don't know if this comes to a topic very specifically, but that is actually something very funny that was going on in the Renaissance, that they were actually recreating and creating new versions of antique things and wanting to sell them as antiques sometimes. So they were actually creating very interesting fakes. And that is always a question that comes when it comes to my artwork, that it looks old, but I'm never pretending to make a fake.
Yeah.
So I'm never pretending it to be old. It just feels it just feels ancient. So there was, I think that was what was going on in the Renaissance, full blown. You know, they didn't want to make Renaissance art. They were actually doing their best to emulate what they thought was ancient, and in the end, there is this timeless idea, which is pretty much what I like, what I enjoy. So yeah, absolutely. That's a very fun confusion that I enjoy. In fact, sometimes people post my stuff. Sometimes people repost my stuff without even knowing that it's me, and they post like unknown medieval artist. And I'm very happy to to see that, but at the same time, I never pretend to be. You know, I never pretend to disseminate fake news. Of course, I never pretend to alter history. I just like that language, and it's a language that speaks to me, and that has grown into a lot of language, visual language of the occult, because a lot of it has been printed these years, and in that is, so that's where I drew from. Yeah.
What other art styles have you explored aside from the work that is presently captured?
Well, I actually graduated as specialized in painting, so I was doing large-scale oil painting, essentially oil on canvas. You could say also in the classical way. Some of it is going to be reproduced in Semesilam as well. So I was actually meant to be a painter, and that didn't work because that kind of painting is not in vogue nowadays. And I actually found a way bigger market and acceptance for the drawings that I was doing. I also learned how to do traditional printmaking, so precisely in the Renaissance way with copper plates and everything. And that's also what helped me learning the line technique, and also learning how it works with the ink, the paper, the acid, and everything else. But it almost made no sense in practical terms nowadays to me, because it was much easier to do a drawing and reproduce it that could have the same taste to it. So those were actually the two techniques that I was exploring with, and that I had to learn officially before staying in drawing, because I felt drawing is much more essential, much more simple, but at the same time, it tells you everything about a person already. You know, from a drawing, you can already tell if somebody knows what they're doing. So
yeah, most definitely. What other mediums, aside from skulls and bones and paper, what other mediums do you experiment with, or do you intend to perhaps experiment with in the future?
I don't really know at this point. I don't really know. If I had the time, I would go back to copper plate printing and just go the old way again. But I don't know if that's something I would like to do. I also want to work on parchment and see how it reacts, because I'm more and more interested in medieval techniques. And if I really had the endless time to do it, I would probably go about making my own ink, which is less related to the artwork and stuff, but more like do your own materials from scratch. That's at the same time a very medieval and a very punk thing to do. But if I could
most
basically
definitely.
if I could at the same time make my own paper, make my own ink, that's what I'm looking forward to in the future. So actually owning your own all of your materials, I know to do them from scratch.
It's pretty fascinating that this is an avenue that you intend to explore. Will bones also be in your future as far as decor and album art and the like?
Well, that depends on where I move and where I stay, because bones are not not a thing that you can work internationally with.
Right.
So that depends. If I go back to Peru for a while, I would probably go back to working with and working on bones if that's an option. Something interesting, and I think it's worth noting, is that I've never actually bought or sold any of those bones. They're always, and when I decorate them, a lot of them don't belong to me. They were actually skulls that my friends already had.
Hmm.
So my offer was always, if you want me to draw on your skull, I'm going to do it for free. And that's how it's been a lot of times. So I like also that bones are this strange, priceless thing, because they can be either super expensive or cost nothing. And that really depends on where you are.
Hmm.
If you go to Peru or if you go to India, bones are probably going to be for free, lying somewhere. But if you go to the US, a skull can cost thousands of dollars. So it's really something that is beyond. And I feel they have this strange potential that they really break our idea of value, because they go beyond life as well.
Hmm.
So it's an interesting idea. And now that I'm seeing a lot of relics, because I'm in Rome now, and every church has tons of pieces of dry people, saints and so on. They also have this beautiful double edge to them,
Hmm.
that they are at the same time something extremely valuable and otherwise something you wouldn't like to encounter in your life. And that would be, at the same time, out of that context, it would be completely something worthless or appalling. So I always find that skulls have that potential, that very interesting thing. They can be either relics or trash,
Yeah.
depending on how you see them. And that's a very interesting thing. That's a very interesting liminal aspect that they do have.
Hmm.
And that's why I love them as well. So, yeah. As an artist, artists usually make this kind of books by the end of their career.
Right.
They make a retrospect like this when they are 70, 60 something. You don't make a full book on your retrospective art when you're in your 30s. So I was doubtful, and I was impressed that there was so much intensity on wanting to have this material, because I was like, well, who am I to pretend to have this already? What I personally look forward to is producing new stuff now that I have finally more opportunity to do so. And I don't really know where that's going right now, but I'm really looking forward to that now that there is a renewed interest.
Well, I want to thank you so much for your time, as brief as it has been, and once again, looking forward to your Kickstarter with Anathema for both Semesilam and Yao. Is there any parting words that you would like to leave viewers and listeners and fans of your work?
Well, first of all, that thanks everybody. I'm really impressed of how strong the support for all of this has been. I don't know what's going to happen in the coming month with the Kickstarter, but it seems there are pretty high expectations on it. And yeah, I just hope I can be back to be an artist, and that's pretty much because people have pushed me to do so. So I'm really humbled by all of that. And yeah, that's pretty much what I would like to mention. And of course, my thanks to Anathema, because of managing and keeping my works available, which is what we want to do now. So
And for those that are not aware of where to find you, what are your socials or other links of interest that you'd like to plug?
I am a mess on that. Mostly Facebook and Instagram, and then of course Anathema itself, I would say. In the occult library, also Daniel Yates is making some
Yes.
material available, which I think it's a nice profile as well. Also Paralibrum by Frater Acher. So yeah, I hope that does the job. However, I am not really full open into taking commissions again. So it's always a bit of a risk to say you can find me there, because sometimes I might get requests for stuff that I cannot do yet, because I'm still trying to get my own work back on track. But yeah, so as a disclaimer, yeah. But yeah,
Excellent. Well, I will certainly put that disclaimer in the show notes.
I mean, yeah, it's sometimes it's a bit of a problem because you feel how people want to support and how people want to partake, but sometimes you really cannot take any more stuff in your menu because there is that. But yeah, but I mean that's a wonderful situation in a way. So yeah, I'm also thankful to being this busy.
Once again, I want to thank you so much for your time, and I am looking forward to seeing this revitalization of your work, your old work in print. And of course, special thanks to our viewers and listeners for tuning into this special episode of the Bibliosophia channel. Check out the link in the description below for more information on where to support this wonderful Kickstarter project through Anathema. If you're a new viewer and would like to stay up to date with the latest from Bibliosophia, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for our channel.